in ourselves. We all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show today on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here at Black Star Network. I am always thrilled when we have this opportunity to get together because so many rich nuggets come from these dialogues and conversation and listening to our guests and the things that we have to talk about related to living a balanced life, living through everyday things. Oftentimes we are unclear, uncertain, and directionless about how to pursue what is next when we're faced with a crisis. Of course, all this month, you know that we've been talking about breast cancer and breast cancer awareness, and we've talked to some breast cancer survivors and even those in the middle of treatment. Well, today we're going to be joined by a couple of people who will share their insight, talk to us about their thoughts, give us awareness that is needed to move us forward as we come alongside others who are facing the diagnosis. Today, we are joined by our regular contributors, Dr. Tierney and Stacey Owens, and we're also joined by three very special guests today, Angela Fuentes of stepsisters.org, also Dr. Regina Hampton, our breast cancer specialist, and then a breast cancer survivor. We'll talk to Sarah Michelle. Welcome in, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, how's everybody doing today?
Great.
Good. Hello.
I am so excited to talk to each and every one of you. Some will do as a group, some will talk to one-on-one. But, you know, as we are moving into the closing days of October and looking at breast cancer awareness, oftentimes we find that individuals are very uncertain about the approach that they should take to the work that they do or the treatments that are needed. And I want to start, with Dr. Hampton today. She's going to be our resident medical physician for today to talk to us a little about those things. Dr. Hampton, when people are initially faced with a diagnosis, how do you help them identify and understand the phases and the steps that they should take?
Yeah, thank you. So, I always start by telling everybody just to exhale, first of all. Take a deep breath and then just exhale. And then really trying to give them time to process the diagnosis first. So I try in my practice not to give a lot of information all in one setting. I try to break them up into multiple sessions so that people can hear more information each time. But I always encourage people to just take the time to just listen. Don't try to make any decisions at your initial or even the second visit with your provider so that you can hear all the options, consider getting a second opinion, and then you can really have a fruitful discussion on what's going to be the best treatment route for you.
So when you think about those options and individuals come for a first opinion, a second opinion, how do doctors handle that? Do they receive the information from the original doctor if they're the second opinion doctor? If you're the first opinion doctor, do they send that information? Because oftentimes information gets lost in the weeds because people are so emotionally high at that moment. What ways do we engage? Is there a checklist that someone receives to help them move forward? Or how do we really explain to individuals what that next step should be to help them stay balanced in their approach?
So I think it depends on the situation. Some patients feel that their provider is not going to be receptive if they say they're going to get a second opinion. I know when either my patients choose to go get a second opinion, I always ask them, well, where are you going? So that we can make sure we send them all the information that we have. And then when people come to me for a second opinion, I try and get the information from the other providers. I think in this day and age, most providers are open and comfortable and realizing sometimes patients just need to hear information, the same information, a different way. And so it's okay to get a second or even a third opinion. So I know for me personally, I always feel like this is not my journey. This is the journey for the patient. And I feel the patient needs to go to the provider where they feel most comfortable. Sometimes that's with me, and sometimes it's with a colleague across town. But as long as the patient is comfortable, then that's always what makes me feel good. Now, not every provider may feel that way, but I think as providers, we got to realize this is not our journey. This is the journey of that patient.
Thank you for sharing that information. You raised a very important issue that I want to toss now to Dr. Tierney, because in her work as a life coach, as Dr. Hampton stated, there are going to be times where you do need to go for a second opinion or a third opinion, but it's about making an informed decision. And sometimes being able to make an informed decision doesn't come easy. Dr. Tierney, when you're talking to your clients and working with individuals who literally have these weighty matters, on their shoulders, how do you help them take the right steps to approach that thing that they are facing? Sometimes it's a second opinion. Sometimes it's where our finances are going to come from. Sometimes it's just who's going to be in my tribe or my village, as I'm going through this. What does decision making look like at that level when a coach steps in as a part of the process?
Absolutely. So my job as the coach is to help you kind of scan the landscape and eat this elephant one bite at a time. As Dr. Hampton said, oftentimes we're trying to take on all the things all at the same time, and that only leads to overwhelm. So the first thing that I tell my clients is just to pray. And not all of my clients are believers, but it's either a prayer, meditation, something that helps you to center yourself, center your soul so that you can hear and think more clearly. The second thing is to just kind of lay all of your options out end to end. Getting the second opinion, looking at the finances, deciding who's going to be in your tribe, and taking those things one step at a time. Often we'll try to think about all the things all at the same time and try to figure out the tribe, try to figure out the finances, and try to get the second opinion and line up the doctors. Sometimes it may be that we may need to delegate. So you may start with identifying your tribe and then saying, hey, friend, can you be the recorder that visits the doctors with me and write down everything that the doctor says, because I'm probably going to miss, some things. Honey, can you take charge of the finances and run the numbers for me? Or, so that we don't feel that, one, we have to do everything, ourselves, and two, that we don't have to do it all at the same time. But it starts with first just centering your soul, be that through prayer, meditation, or whatever it is that helps you to center yourself.
I appreciate you talking about being able to center yourself, because there are so many things when it comes to balanced living that get us into that space of saying, it's about at this moment, this is the thing that is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And as we're talking about this, and each of you are viewing and watching, and you're trying to figure out, how do I handle XYZ diagnosis? How do I handle all of the people that are in my space? What level of conversation do I need to have in order for me to find balance in my life? I want to talk to Dr. Hampton one more time before we go to a break, because oftentimes patients bring other issues along with them with their breast cancer diagnosis. So Dr. Hampton, when that happens, and a person gets a diagnosis, but they're already in that space of hypertension or high blood pressure, they're already in that space of having diabetes, this is just one other thing to add on to a list of already existing medical conditions. In what ways do people begin to formulate a pathway to seeking care? Do I deal with the breast cancer diagnosis first? Do I deal with my hypertension first? Do I deal with my diabetes first? Where do we begin in the landscape of approach?
Yeah, that you bring up a great point, and that sometimes presents a challenge, especially when patients have multiple different medical challenges that they're dealing with. So it's really about a team-based approach. So it's the oncology team with the breast surgeon, the medical oncologist, the radiation oncologist, and the patient navigator, along with the primary care team, which could be the family practitioner, the internist, or the gynecologist. And it's really about us all working together, sharing information, getting the patient to share information with us so that we can take care of the whole patient and not just the cancer. So it's just that team-based approach.
I can respect that. A team-based approach is oftentimes what's necessary in order for us to not only make informed, sound decisions, but also to have a healthcare pathway that is sustainable for us as we go. When we come back after the break, I'm going to pause here at 9:53. When we come back after the break, I want to talk to Angela Fuentes, who is co-owner, operator, manager, provider within Stepsisters organization. I think it's important as we have these conversations, we look also at how community plays a part in the ways in which we seek help. When we're back after the break.
We've got to stand up. Republicans are banning abortion rights, tearing down democracy, blocking progress. But when Democrats stand together, we win. Because we voted, Democrats stood up for Black lives, voting to ban police chokeholds, stood up for Black women, putting one on the Supreme Court, stood up for our families, lowering cost of health care and prescriptions and capping insulin, and stood up for millions by slashing student debt. This November, let's stand up together and keep making progress.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, receiving a diagnosis of any kind requires a team of people, a host of individuals who can help you navigate the pathway. I want to talk for just a moment with Angela Fuentes from stepsisters.org. I think it's important that as we look at avenues for help, as we think about individuals who can walk alongside us, sometimes they're right there in our very own community. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you very much for having me.
I am delighted that you are here. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and stepsisters.org?
Sure. I am one of the co-founders and co-executive directors of the Stepsisters. And how I got involved is I'm actually a 14-year survivor today. So this is kind of my way to pay forward some of the support I received. I've heard words like, who's your tribe? Who's your support group today? And that's kind of what the Stepsisters role is. Not everybody is as lucky as I was, for example, and had a huge support group of friends and family. And so the stepsisters step in like a sister would to help all these local patients that may not have the same type of support.
So tell us a little bit about the organization and the role that, I'll use the term she, that the organization plays, in the community. You are located in the DMV area in Virginia, I believe. And so what does that look like for the local community to have your presence there as an organization?
Yes, so that was kind of our whole idea behind this. We started out just kind of raising money for research, and it's a great reason to put your money towards research, but we wanted to bring the funds back to the local community. And we started small. We were in Loudoun County, and we have now grown to 9 different locations in the Northern Virginia area. So we are able to just kind of we started small, helped the people within Loudoun, and once we were able to serve the people there, then we grew slowly out to Fairfax, Fair Oaks, Prince William County, Reston. So it's just our way of giving back to the direct community that that's local to us.
Well, you bring up an interesting question because oftentimes individuals want to get into that nonprofit space and they want to be causal. And so we do see a host of cause-based nonprofits in that space and awareness. What are some tips that you would give an individual who, like yourself, is a survivor, who may be watching and say, I would like to do something very similar? How do you set that course of direction to know for certain that this is an avenue that should be pursued?
Absolutely. So you had mentioned, or Dr. Hampton mentioned, a nurse navigator. That is somebody that comes to the patient and kind of helps them navigate this journey that they're about ready to go on. And they are kind of the number one resource for a lot of patients in the area. And they would be able to tell you, hey, the stepsisters are out here, or these other organizations are out there. What we did when we started was we sat down with a lot of the local breast cancer organizations to kind of make sure we were hitting an area that wasn't already covered. So, even if we can't help somebody, if they were to come to us, we would be able to point them to somebody else in the local area that may do something that's a little more helpful to them. Or, if they're coming back to volunteer, there's so many opportunities to give back after you've gone through treatment.
Amazing, because oftentimes finding that direction, and I've learned a lot about your organization, and I've walked before, for Stepsisters, and I appreciate the work that you do in the community. One of the other things that you do so well is quality of life. Can you talk to us about the quality of life plan or pathway that you have?
Sure. So that is one of the 3 programs that we offer. Quality of life services are things like a house cleaning, food delivery, transportation to and from treatment. What woman or man who is going through a treatment wouldn't want their house clean when they're unable to clean, either because, they're immune suppressant or just, physically are too tired to do it. So many appointments are going on while you're going through treatment. Maybe you don't have time to provide, a meal for your family, or, maybe you're alone and you can't cook for yourself. So it's that type of quality of life services that the stepsisters try to step in and help with.
One of the other that you mentioned was crisis funds, but with that also comes alongside the chemo bag. I'm sure that is a very delightful thing to receive as a patient. Talk to us about the chemo bag.
Yes. So we provide about 1,000 chemo bags a year, and we give them out to the various nurse navigators that we work with at all the hospitals. And they really have a better relationship with the patients. We don't necessarily always meet the patients that we serve for privacy reasons. And so we let the nurse navigators kind of be that in-between middleman that provides these chemo care bags when they know a patient is about ready to go through that treatment.
Wow, Stepsister sounds like it's doing an amazing work in its local community. What are some of the other tips as it relates to being balanced? Because serving as a nonprofit individual and the work that you do, how do you keep balanced yourself, serving the needs of so many other people?
It really comes from the heart for me. It's something that I'm passionate about because, I had so many meals delivered to my doorstep that I had to buy an extra fridge to store all these meals. And, I realize how fortunate I am. And I always tell people 99% of what got me through treatment was the support that I received. It was the positive attitude. It was how people just kept me lifted the entire time. And so, I kind of bring that back to my own life. If I'm helping somebody, I feel lifted. I feel like I'm serving a purpose. And, that kind of keeps me going with everything that I do.
Thank you so much for sharing that information, and congratulations on your 14-year survivorship. I'm certain that it's been a journey for you. If you wouldn't mind, can you walk us through some of the ebb and flow of your journey, and even now post-cancer? What does that look like, and how do people face it?
I always tell people when they ask me that, there is life after cancer. And a lot of people, can't see that far ahead. And here I am 14 years out. I rarely think about it. I remember bits and pieces of what went on 14 years ago. And honestly, the pieces I remember, I was never alone. I remember my husband being at all my appointments. I remember my parents helping out with the kids. So I feel like once you've gotten through it, you kind of forget about all the bad stuff and you only remember all the good stuff. And, even now, I'm constantly reminded of what I went through when I talk to patients or we visit a hospital. But it's so far behind me that, I'm able to just kind of go past it and move on. And it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm going to ask Stacey Owens to come in for just a moment because, Angela, one of the questions I want to ask is, were you employed at the time that you got your initial cancer diagnosis?
I am very fortunate in that once I actually had stopped my regular corporate job prior to my diagnosis just to be home with the kids, and I was doing a little part-time work, but I was so fortunate that I didn't need to work and I was able to stop and focus on my health and focus on being with my family. I do realize not everybody is that fortunate. We do have a crisis fund, and it does help women or men who are unable to work, or maybe they have to cut down on their hours and they have mounting medical bills, and we help with things like housing and utilities. But I fortunately was able to stop working and focus on my health.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, Stacey, when we think about those opportunities where individuals are still working and things that are going on, you're the author of a new book called Creating Safe Spaces. From an employer perspective, what does that look like when an individual comes to you, or how would you help employers create those safe spaces for conversations such as these?
That's a very, great question. As an employer, I think through my years of leading education, I had to learn very quickly that our staff come to us with issues from their personal lives that can impact how they perform at work. And when you create an environment where people are not comfortable with coming in and sharing their personal stories, because sometimes you hear folks say that you're supposed to leave your personal issues at the door when you go to work. Well, I debunk that. Like, you can't leave you at the door. I want you to bring all of you in, and then I want you to be transparent and communicate with your employer or your boss about what's going on with you personally, so that you can remain emotionally balanced between dealing with your personal issues at home and your work issues. We can't provide support for things that we don't know about. So we got to be able to communicate what your needs are, so we can surround you and provide the support that we can. So in my situation, we have teachers that come in who may have diagnoses, who are dealing with sick parents, who may be pregnant or whatever, and they still have that expectation of having to come in and teach and plan lessons and carry out their professional duties. So if I have an employee who comes to me and say, this is what I'm dealing with at home, then I can say, what support can I provide you? And from that, we may lessen your work duties. We may lessen your day if we can. But we can put a plan in place to help you to be able to still perform, because you need, for whatever reason, your employee, your check. So what can we do to help you remain employed and be able to take care of your family, at the same time making you feel comfortable with your self-care? So I like it best when we say, how can we work together as employer and employee so that we don't have to outdo one of the other?
Absolutely. It takes collaboration and communication in order to be able to move individual lives forward. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk to Sarah Michelle. I'm excited to invite her in and have this conversation with us about her non-traditional approach to her cancer care when we're back after the break.
We've got to stand up. Republicans are banning abortion rights, tearing down democracy, blocking progress. But when Democrats stand together, we win. Because we voted, Democrats stood up for Black lives, voting to ban police chokeholds, stood up for Black women, putting one on the Supreme Court, stood up for our families, lowering cost of health care and prescriptions and capping insulin, and stood up for millions by slashing student debt. This November, let's stand up together and keep making progress.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, learning how to live balance in the midst of crisis, in the midst of everything that we face day to day, and sometimes things that are just not expected or anticipated, we do need people around us. I'm excited today to talk to Sarah Michelle because she's taken a non-traditional pathway to her cancer care. And I'm excited to invite her in for you to learn of her story. Hey, Sarah.
Hello, beautiful. How are you?
I love. How are you doing today? How are you feeling?
A little rough this morning. It's been a little rough this morning, but I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. Giving myself grace to heal. I'm just allowing myself the absolute grace to heal. Yes, ma'am.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because I'd like for you to tell us your kind of cancer that you have or had, and then the approach that you took to receive the care that you believe you needed.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. So I began to feel my health and my internal system failing like in 2020. I would sleep through the night and I would wake up exhausted and completely just flabbergasted and just tired. And so after different rounds of testing and batteries and, just kind of going through all the process, that was in 2020. In 2021, I ended up being awakened to feeling like my left breast was on fire, like not sore, not tender, but literally feeling like it was on fire. So I went to my doctor once again and I said, something is going on. This isn't right. Something is off. So I went and I got a referral for a mammogram, ultrasound. And then they did a biopsy because they were concerned about the abnormality of the mammogram and the ultrasound. And when the biopsy came back, they did call and they said that it was triple negative breast cancer. And honestly, it was such a surreal moment. It was also kind of a sigh of relief. Because for a while, the doctors were kind of making you think, even during the pandemic, that, it could have been all in your head, or it could have just been the difference in the shift of society because the world had been shut down. But I'm so grateful that I kept self-advocating and I kept saying, no, something is off, something's not right, something is not lining up. And so because of all of that persistence and even some of the pushback that I got, and if it wasn't for self-advocation, I wouldn't even have gotten to a diagnosis, in all honesty. So for me, the approach that I've taken for natural remedy for minerals versus chemicals is because if I went through the process of feeling my immune system decline, I believe that God can bless and anoint the process to reverse engineer that. And so I've been going to different natural health and healing centers on a full battery of herbs and plant medicines and things of that nature. I've adjusted my eating to a more clean, alkaline-based diet and things of that nature. And yeah.
So how is that journey going for you?
It's very interesting. It's way more spiritual, I believe, than it is natural. And although, I experience pain, I experience discomfort, I can also feel my internal system adjusting and getting better, right? And so I do believe that healing is a process. And I do believe that a part of that healing process is pain, it's agony, it's discomfort. But I do have full confidence that I'll come out better than how I went into it. It's been a lot of uncertainties. There's been a lot of challenge and even opposition from my family and friends, because when people just love you, they're scared to lose you. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes the display of that and the response and the reaction to that is not always so nice, and it's not always so loving. So I've experienced that as well, which has not helped the journey.
Well, that's understandable, because often people, what they don't understand, there is a tendency to have that pushback. Where are you now with your breast cancer?
So I am scheduled to get another PET scan this coming week. And so that'll kind of determine where things are, if I need to kick things up a notch, or if I just need to plateau. I have been on a sabbatical from all business and all work since I've been in business for the last 21 plus years. So I've been going constantly for 21 plus years across the globe. And it was finally time for me to say, you know what? I need to focus on Sarah. I need to focus on healing. And this wellness journey is definitely well worth it. And so I can better know where things are once I get the results from the PET scan. And I have already come to a solace about, if the PET scan still shows areas of concern in my body, I will extend the sabbatical. I will not come off a sabbatical until all of my margins are clear.
Thank you for sharing that. I do want to invite in Dr. Regina Hampton, because she is our breast cancer surgeon and specialist. And you mentioned two words that I've not heard put together before, which is one of the reasons why you're here. And I'd like for us to kind of unpack that for a moment.
Okay.
The chemicals versus minerals. Dr. Hampton, how does that affect the body in its preparation for healing when a person doesn't go right into some type of chemotherapy or medication?
Yeah, so we certainly in the medical community, encourage a total body wellness. So, we encourage exercise, we encourage, changing diet and making, all those personal changes, I think are important and really contribute to, kind of the whole well-being. People talk about chemicals and chemotherapy more specifically. And, I think chemotherapy really gets a bad rap, but what I can tell you, especially for a triple negative breast cancer, chemotherapy is one of the most effective treatment regimens that we have out there. And what we've learned is that in many cases, using the chemotherapy first prior to doing the surgery, we actually get good outcomes. So I tend to see a lot of women who have triple negative breast cancers, and we tend to give them the chemotherapy up front. And the great thing about it is we can wipe the tumor away before I even go to do the surgery. So I operated on my former practice manager who had a triple negative breast cancer. And when I went to go do her surgery, there was not one tumor cell left. It was just the clip, the biopsy clip. And so while, people give chemotherapy a bad rap, we've just learned a lot more. Women can get chemotherapy and continue to do the things that they love to do. So I had a patient who needed to get chemotherapy and she traveled for work. So she would stay in town that week, get her treatment, and then the next 2 weeks in between treatments, she's on and off airplanes, continuing on with her day. So much has just changed over the years. I always encourage people to really sit down and have honest conversations with your providers, really hear what's going on today, not what happened 20, 30 years ago, because we weren't doing so great. But, we really have made a lot of strides, especially when we talk about triple negative breast cancer.
Right. So the reason I also wanted to ask you that as it related to Sarah is that I've known Sarah for a little while now, and I've watched her journey. And it seems like when people take an approach that first best works for them, they're in a better space emotionally, physically, emotionally to deal with all of the other things that may come up later. Why does self-care, the way that Sarah's approaching it now at this initial onset stage, self-care and self-awareness about the body, how does that help people mentally and emotionally deal with what may come next?
Yeah, I think it's important that people feel comfortable in the approach. So I've had, patients who say, hey, I want to take this non-traditional approach for, a defined amount of time, and then I'll come back and maybe do the other treatment. And I think that empowers patients. And then I think it makes them better equipped both mentally and physically to, kind of move through some of the rigors of treatment. And so I know just in my approach, I really like to work with patients and not against patients and say, hey, sometimes we can agree to disagree, but let's still keep those open lines of communication and know that, let's try and do this together. And I think as a medical community, I think we have to just open our minds because, patients have rights. And although we may not agree all the time, let's see how we can work together to get the patient ultimately to a better health and cancer-free.
Absolutely. I thank you both for sharing that. Sarah, when you are headed back this week or later next week for your next appointment, and with the treatment that you've already pursued, being on sabbatical, going to the treatment facilities for natural care, what are your hopes or faith and belief for the outcome now that you're going for this next scan?
I am a firm believer in miracles. I believe that the things that have been revealed has been a part of the healing journey. At the beginning of this, the Lord told me to not claim a diagnosis per se, but to approach it as it being a healing journey. And so I believe that the diagnosis of cancer was just a symptom, a part of the total wellness healing journey. And so I'm grateful because I will be going back into a PET scan equipped with I've lost 40 pounds since I've been on my healing journey. I've officially come off of blood pressure medication, and I've been able to manage pain with natural medicine, herbs, and things of that nature. Why that is important to me is because even if it comes to a point, because I'm going to use wisdom, right? So even if it comes to a point, let's say after January, because I decided I'm going to give myself a 6-month run using the natural route, right? But if after 6 months there's still margins and still concern, then we'll consider. So nothing is off the table. Mm-hmm. My thought process is I wanted to ensure that my internal system, my immune system would be strong enough, my constitution, and honestly, my entire environment. Because when I say everything has been shaken up, I mean, everything has been shaken up. And so for me, I believe the Lord allowed the diagnosis of cancer to remove all the cancer out of my life. And so it's a little deeper for me. And so I am open to treatment if it should come to that. But I do not take off the table that the God that I serve is definitely able to heal me completely through ways of a miracle. But wisdom will be applied. Yes, ma'am.
Well, let me just tell you, I can tell from everybody in the gallery today that you got an amen and a couple of hand claps on that, because faith does play a very big part in how we do what we do. If you're watching and you happen to be a person of faith, and you know on this show, many of our guests are, as am I. And it's important for us that our faith move us toward those things. And as Sarah eloquently said, you have to use wisdom. But also, as Dr. Hampton said, you have to work in concert with the medical professionals so that you can have the ability to make informed decisions. When we come back after the break, I'm going to talk to all of our guests because, you know, learning to live a balanced life in the things that we face day to day, it's not easy when we're back after the break.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life. And as you can tell, today has been a little bit emotionally charged, but at the same time, it's helping us to set some ground rules, some boundaries, a space for us to discover the balance that we need in order to be able to navigate our situations and circumstances. I want to invite everybody back in because as we come to, you know, this fourth block in our show, there's some things that we have heard today. There's some information that has been shared that, you know, I think we need to kind of unpack just a little bit. So I'm going to come to Dr. Tierney first, because when we talk about who we are and what we do, how important is it to know thyself?
Oh, that you came right with the right question to me. That's one of the very first things that I talk to my clients about, knowing who we are, whose we are, and from that knowing, then outlining what we should do. Oftentimes we jump right into the do without first defining our who. I love what Sarah Michelle just said about doing what's best for her. You know, other people have other opinions about what she should be doing, but because she knows who she is and she is clear about whose she is doing exactly what's needed for her. She's taking a sabbatical. Someone else may decide to continue to work. I'm thinking about Chadwick Boseman, who recorded, you know, the Black Panther while he was, you know, suffering from cancer or healing, being treated from cancer, excuse me. But it comes down to who you are and what's best for you. Someone else may decide chemo is the direction. Someone else may say, you know what, I want to go a homeopathic route. But whatever you do, it all comes back to who you are and whose you are. That is the thing that we must lock into first before we decide what it is that we should be doing.
Absolutely. Angela, when you think about all the patients that you work with and the families that you see, how does that impact you as a nonprofit owner and as a cancer survivor? Is there a joy there that you see that you embrace with others?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, last night I met a woman who was just diagnosed a month ago and had just gone through surgery. And just to be able to have that connection with somebody, I could tell that it helped her, but what she doesn't realize is that it helps me as well, because it gives me purpose. It shows me that what I went through wasn't for nothing. Like I took that, and this may not be the path in life that I thought I was going to be on, but because of that, I took this other path. And it's been a beautiful journey, and I've met some wonderful people. And I think although I'm helping them, they don't realize that they're also helping me.
Absolutely. Sarah Michelle, how have you grown through this experience?
My Lord. My faith has catapulted to levels that I could only imagine. I am very clear about my assignment in the earth. And I have come to know that if God allows it, whatever the it is, right? If God allows it, then it has purpose. And so I've learned to not ask why, but what. What is it that you're teaching me? What is it that I'm supposed to learn? What is it that I'm supposed to see? What is it that I'm supposed to gain from this? What did I miss before that now has caught up with me throughout this healing journey? So I'm asking more of the what questions versus the why, because I'm not a victim. I'm just sojourning through. It's just a part of the journey.
You know, I have to tell you, I love your excitement, enthusiasm, and your outlook, because I think that our mental well-being plays a very big part in how we move forward. Dr. Hampton, tell us what's on your mind. Because oftentimes people literally are lost in the midst of everything that they're facing.
Yeah, I mean, just so many great points. I think people have to, find themselves before they move through the journey. So I really love that. And then, I often ask the patient, like, what's the real cancer, or who or what is the real cancer? Because I can take care of the cancer in your body, but I can't always take care of the cancers that are surrounding you. So that might be where we need to focus the treatment and get that healed first and get those cancers out of our lives before we can get the body right. So, I think it really is about just the journey, and the journey can take on so many different twists and turns for each patient. So excited and just best of luck to Sarah Michelle. I think, you really have a good formula going.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Hey, Stacy.
Hey.
I know you've got something to share with us, because oftentimes you're dealing with yourself, your family, your staff, your students. How do people embrace this journey that they may find themselves on and get balance from it when they know they can have support system from, someone like you in their community?
Well, first I have to just say, Sarah, girl, you better keep shining that light. Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
just touched my soul over here. I was just sitting over here trying not to get out this chair and just jump for joy, because that's a special space to be in, And I think when helping others, it's just helping us just to see just that. No, this is your journey. How can you embrace it? Embrace those around you who can give you the support. Take those days when you have good days. Don't beat yourself up when you're having those bad days, knowing that you're going to be balanced some days, and you're still okay on the days that you are not balanced. I can tell you right now, I walk around and preach balance for everybody. And I had to tell my staff the other day, I'm not balanced right now, because if you watch my stories, you'll see I have my little grandbaby here with me. And it's been a while since I've had a 2-year-old in my home, and she's come with some issues that have triggered some other issues with her father, who's my son, who has those, who also is a cancer survivor. And just for myself, remembering, what, Stacey, what is your purpose in all of this? Don't become overwhelmed. Enjoy each small step. Take this elephant, like Dr. Tierney say, and eat it one small bite at a time. And if you can just remember those key points as you're dealing with whatever life throws you, you'll turn those lemons into lemonade. But just keep that light shining. So thank you. I'm so glad that I had an opportunity to hear your story today.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies, for being with us today. And I hope that our audience has gleaned some information that will allow them to move their lives forward. I'll give my reflections when we're back after the break.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
We've got to stand up. Republicans are banning abortion rights, tearing down democracy, blocking progress. But when Democrats stand together, we win. Because we voted, Democrats stood up for black lives, voting to ban police chokeholds, stood up for black women, putting one on the Supreme Court, stood up for our families, lowering cost of health care and prescriptions and capping insulin, and stood up for millions by slashing student debt. This November, let's stand up together and keep making progress.
Welcome back, everyone, to A Balanced Life with Dr. Jacquie here at Black Star Network. And you can tell that today is one of those days where we just needed a little bit of inspiration, motivation, and an opportunity to really allow ourselves to settle in to who we are, to discover what comes next in life, and how to know and say that it's okay to stop out and take time to discover what pathway is best for you. All of our journeys are different, but each of us can look around and say that we have a few people in our lives that we need to say, exit stage left. But then we also have some people where we need to say, let's swipe right. So that way they can come in and help us on our journey, to give us the grace that we need in order to be able to move forward. And knowing that each and every day is a new day to explore, to try something different, and just to say that if it's not okay today, tomorrow will be better. Thank you everyone for watching our show. Bye now.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.